Assalamu alaikum. Hope you all are doing good. In this video we are going to study how to use procedures in 8086 assembly language using 8086 emulator. So what is a procedure? Procedure is the part of code that can be called from your program in order to make some specific task. Their functionality is similar to the functionality of functions in programming language C. Procedure make program more structural and easier to understand. Why? Because we have to write them only once and we can use their functionality multiple times only by calling that procedure. Generally, procedure returns to the same point from where it was called. So when procedure call occurs in code, the instruction pointer saves its current value and it jumps to the procedure. After the execution of the procedure, the instruction pointer moves back to that value which is stored. To use procedure in 8086 assembly language, we have to follow its syntax, which is that first we have to give it a name, and then after writing the name we have to write PROC, which shows the start of the procedure, and then after that we have to write its code according to its functionality, and at the end we have to write RET, which shows a return from procedure, and in the end we have to write same name and then write end P in front of it, which shows the end of procedure. So the name that we have used with the starting and end of this procedure should be the same name, which shows the name of the program. This is an example of procedure whose name is sums, and this is the starting line and this is the code. After the code of the procedure there is a return, and in the end there is a name with end P, which shows the end of procedure. Next, there are some notes on the syntax. The first one is probably you already know the RET instruction is used to return to the operating system in the code that we have used in loop in previous video. The same instruction is used to return from procedure in this procedure. The proc and end P are compiler directives, so they are not assembled in any real machine code. Compiler just remember the address of the procedure. So after making a procedure we have to utilize its functionality, which can be done by calling the function. So how to call a procedure in 8086 assembly language? So to call a procedure in 8086 assembly language we have to write call word and then write the name of the procedure in front of it, as written in the second line of this example. So this procedure call is calling to the procedure named M1, which is written here below. So when this procedure call occurs, the control will be transferred to this procedure. In this procedure there is an instruction which move value 5 in BX register, and then there is a RET which will transfer the control to the caller. So after this RET instruction the IP will start executing the next instruction that is present after the function call, which is move AX2. So after this example there is a RET. So as this RET is not present in any procedure, so this will return to the operating system, means that this will end this code. Next, there are some points related to call and return. So when procedure call occurs, then the call instruction saves a return address on the stack, and when a return instruction occurs it removes that address from the stack and places it into the instruction pointer. It says that don't forget to put a return at the end of the procedure, because if we don't put this ret at the end of the procedure, then the instruction pointer will not return to the caller. In last line it says that you can use several ret in a procedure like return in C. A procedure may need some parameters on which it can perform execution. So there are several ways to pass parameters to a procedure. The easiest way is by using registers. Put parameters to the registers and call the procedure. The procedure should be designed so that it uses those registers. Another way is by using stack. Push the parameters to the stack and call the procedure. The procedure should be designed so that it receives parameters from the stack using the pop instruction. In either way, the programmer should know the structure of the procedure. This is an example of function or procedure calling which we will be implementing in emulator 8086. So we are going to just copy paste this code in emulator and see how this works. So now we are emulating this code, and the first step is move the value 1 in AL. So after executing this first step, as you can see that the value of AL is changed to 0 1. On next step there is a value 2 moved in BL as shown. On third line there is a procedure called name M2, so this will call to the procedure name M2 which is present at this line number 8. So after the execution of this code, you will see that the instruction pointer will be shifted into this procedure. So after as we execute this, you can see that the pointer is shifted into the procedure. In procedure it says that multiply AL2 with AX and store the result in AL. So after multiplying 1 by 2, the result will be 2, which will be stored in AX register. So after executing this, you can see that value is changed to 02. And after that there is a return which will return to the caller. Means that after execution of this, the instruction pointer will point the instruction that is present after the caller, which is that instruction return to the operating system. So you will see that when I execute this instruction, the pointer will be shifted to the instruction that is present after the procedure call. So after executing this, you can see the pointer is shifted upward. So this returned, as I have discussed earlier, is not present in any procedure. So this means that this return is the return to the operating system, which is the end of this program. So this is the end of this program. In this example, we have passed the parameter to the procedure using register. So to use stack to pass parameters to the procedure, we have to first push the parameters in the stack using push instruction before the procedure, and in the procedure, to use that parameters, we have to use the pop instruction, which will pop that parameters from the stack, and we can use them in procedure. Going back to the slides, next there is a macros, which are just like procedures but not really. Macros look like procedures, but they exist only until your program is compiled. After compilation, all macros are replaced with real instructions. If you declared a macro and never use it in your code, compiler will simply ignore this. So this is the main difference between macros and procedure. So this is the syntax of the macro, in which first we have to give it a name and then write the word macro, and after that we have to write parameters, and in macro we have to write some instruction related to that macro, and in the end we will write end m, which will show the end of this macro. So unlike procedures, macros should be defined above the code that uses it. So this is the code of macro that is defined before the starting of the code, which is named my macro. And p1, p2, p3 are the parameters that will be using in this macro. As you can see that they are moved in this register. So in the main program there is procedure like calling of the macro. So how does the calling of macro occurs? It is done by only writing the name of the macro and then write the parameters after it. Like in this 1, 2, 3 are the parameters that will be defined to p1, p2 and p3 respectively. Similarly, the next calling of macro occurs with 4, 5 and dx parameters, and in the end there is a return to the operating system. So there is a code explanation output on the right side of this code. So the first three lines are the output when the function calling macro calling occurs with 1, 2, 3 parameters, and the last three lines are the output when the macro calling occurs with 4, 5 and dx value. Next, there are some points which differentiate the clarity between macros and procedure. So the first one is, when you want to call procedure, you should use call instruction. For example, as call my pros, which is calling my procedure. And when you want to use macro, you just type its name, for example my macro. Then the second point is, you should use stack on any general purpose register to pass parameters to procedure, while in case of macro, to pass parameters we just type them after the macro name. For example, macro 1, 2, 3. So here 1, 2, 3 are the parameters to the macro named my macro. The third point is, macro ends with end m directive and procedure ends with end p directive. Procedure are located at specified address in memory, but macro are expanded directly in program's code. There is an example of macro and we are going to implement this in emulator by copy pasting it. So we are emulating this. So there is an error which says that duplicate declaration of label 1. So as we can see that the calling of macro 2 with same parameters are called twice, so this will generate an error because the parameters are also same. So now if we emulate, then there are no errors. So the program will start from the main, which is present at after the org 100h hex, which shows 100 hexa. So if we run this instruction, which is the macro calling of the macro named my macro 2. So after the macro calling, the execution of macro will be started without shifting this control to the macro. So if we run this, then the first step of this macro, which is compare ax with 2. So if we see flags, then they are not equal, so the equal bit is also 0. Next, as again the ax and 3 are not equal, so the jump label 2 instruction will not occur, and the next instruction with label 1 only will simply occur, which will not affect on execution. So after executing label 1, next instruction is increment ax. So after that you can see that the value of ax is incremented to 1. Next instruction is add ax2, so the value of ax will be changed to 3. As you can see that the value of ax is changed to 3. And next there is an end of macro, so the control will be transferred to the next instruction, which is present after the calling of macro, which is returned to the operating system. And this is the end of this example in which I have discussed the execution of macro. So this is all from this video, in which first we have discussed that what are procedures, how to use them syntaxically in 8086 assembly language. Then we have emulated an example of procedure stepwise and discussed its emulation. Then after that we have discussed that what are macro and how they relate and differ with procedure. And in last we have emulated macro example and discussed its emulation. So if this video has been helpful to you, then like this video. Thank you.